Hello. So, yes, this panel is going to be all about PR and the mystical, magical world of public relations. What is PR? How do I get on that blog? How do I get on the front cover? Do people care? Why don't they reply to my emails? What do journalists do all day? Hopefully, we're going to answer some of those questions in our panel. But what's probably beneficial is if everyone introduces themselves and just sort of says why they're here. What do you do?
My name is Helene RFI, and like a lot of the other kind of panelists have said, I've got quite a few hats on. I started off as a blogger for a Scottish-based blog called Podcart, and it's a podcast as well. I then moved into PR and worked for a London-based company called Badge Friendship. And I also work with a venue in Glasgow called Block. And I do digital marketing as well. So a general whore around the music industry.
My name's Harry. I just ate a sandwich really fast downstairs. So I'm gonna be making some noises and burping, and I'm really sorry.
Very musical.
But I think that gives an idea.
Literally.
But I live in Leeds. I work for a company in Leeds called I Like Press, which is all sort of changing. So I think above me it says Hangland's PR, but that hasn't changed yet. So ignore that. It's I Like Press. So we've not handled the publicity of that change particularly well, actually, it turns out. But I work for a company in Leeds called I Like Press. I also run a festival and promoter in Leeds with my friend Nick, who was on the panel earlier, called High and Lonesome. So we do shows in Leeds with artists like Josh T. Pearson and This Is the Kit, lots of kind of Americana, alt country, post rock, things like that. And I play in a band called Cruel World, who will be playing across the road at Stereo in October. So thank you.
My name's Shaun, Curran. I'm a freelance music writer. Yeah, I write for The Independent, The Eye Paper, Record Collector, the Japan Times, and a few others more sporadically. And I once had an absolutely disastrous spell as a PR. So I know what not to do. Yeah.
Great. So probably, of artists here, who employs a PR currently? A couple. Does anyone do their own PR? Cool. So there's a good mix of people here. I guess let's start at the very beginning. What is PR? Why is it beneficial? Why should artists be looking to engage with PR?
I think, firstly, what it is rapidly changing and hard to define, which is something that I think everyone's trying to get their heads around sort of constantly. But I guess from my perspective, from working at like a traditional music and festival PR company, like my main responsibilities at work are like running through a full campaign with like a client on whatever they're working with, like whether it's an album or a tour or a single or some kind of combination of all of them, or like going through like the festival circuit. We tend to organise and pitch for reviews, other bits of coverage, interviews, and then basically anything we can do to kind of get the word out. And that's talking to festival PR companies and making sure that, you know, every journalist that's attending a festival knows what time that band is playing and where they're playing, or whether it's, you know, looking at slightly more interesting and sort of slightly sneaky ways of getting them written about in places. And like I work with an amazing band in Leeds who I probably will use as an example a lot, called My My. They're brilliant. They've been on Podcart quite a few times because they're great. And Jamie, the singer and songwriter in My My, owns a recording studio in Leeds. So as an example, we did a feature with the Eye Paper about how there is an analogue tape-only recording studio underneath a church in Armley, which if you don't know is quite a horrible part of Leeds. So they did that, and then at the end of it, snuck a little bit. My new album will be out this day. So things like that. But basically, it's about getting a band into places.
So promotion in general of a band, their activities, releases and tours.
Yeah.
In a very basic way of explaining what it is. So, and obviously why it's beneficial, more people know about it, more people can come to shows, buy records, and generally grow your audience, which everyone wants to do. So when doing your own PR, we'll start from the beginning. You've just started. You're in a band. You're starting to play shows. You've got some demos. You want to look at doing your own PR. What approach should you take? What do you need? What tools do you need to have? What assets do you need to have? Where's a good starting point before going on to working with a company?
Okay, so you need finished songs, and preferably if they're mastered as well is fantastic, because I'm speaking with a PR and a blogger hat on here. If you get an email through with something that says demo, then it unfortunately gets pushed to the side. We kind of want to hear what the finished product is. In terms of demos, that's when you're approaching the team that's working around you. Not that I'm saying a PR person is not part of your team, but it's really important to have what you envisage your song to sound like as the end game to be done. A biography would be quite good. If you feel that you're kind of not up to writing a biography, then your PR will kind of probably send questions. I'm not sure if you send questions out, Harry.
Can sometimes. A thing, just quickly on the biography thing, a thing which not a lot of bands do, which is a really good idea, is most freelance writers will write biographies for bands. And if you go and if you go through a music magazine and you say you like I would like to think my band sounds a bit like Wilco. We're not that good. But I would go and find who reviewed Wilco at Uncut, and I'd maybe try and find that contact. I'd maybe go review them at Mojo, or review them for The Independent, and I'd maybe try and get in touch with that writer. So trying to find a writer who is sympathetic to the type of music you make, they will probably absolutely, definitely take the work, right? Yeah. And write a bio for you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. There's actually people in this room that I know that would do that for you. There's one standing at the back of the room. Pressshots is a really important thing. High resolution Pressshots, and something that isn't you standing in a forest or against a fucking wall, because it is honestly.
What? You don't want any more of those?
No, especially indie lad bands standing in a forest or against a wall. Honestly, it just is quite depressing. But something quite interesting and striking, or something that's kind of maybe going to represent you as a musician or as an artist. And I guess your social media, everything kind of maybe quite fluid. You've got your channels set up and so on. It's things like that we try. Oh, Spotify for Artists and your Spotify account. Spotify for Artists is probably one of the most, and Tony, if I'm not sure if he's still there, he is. It's such an important tool, and I'll probably talk about it more later, but because I use it when I'm PRing actually. But for you as a musician, it's one of the most vital things that you can kind of have at the moment. Is there anything I've missed in terms of what you're looking for?
Shaun, what do you look for? Say an artist reaches out to you. Are there particular things that you want to know?
I mean, biography is obviously important, and you want to know as much as possible. But I think to get noticed, you've got to decide what the most important thing about you is, and get that as high up or as noticeable as possible. Especially if you're emailing someone unsolicited. I might not know who you are, but if it's just like X releases new single, then I might not even really take much notice of it, depending on how busy you are and whatever. So think about, I suppose, to use a bit of a wanky phrase, what your USP might be, and really play on that.
Unique selling point.
Unique selling point, yeah.
Just in case.
And try and get that in an email subject header, or at least at the top of the email. Don't try and make it too business-like either, because there's so many just identikit press releases. So try and put a bit of your personality into it as well, I'd say.
And is there anything that you hate? Is there anything that when you get an email through and it's, say, an artist reaching out, or even maybe a PR, we'll go on to once you got through the first stage and you're on level 2 and you're like, okay, right now I need to hire a PR, or I'm interested in how can I further it. Is there something that, say like you personally, you can't speak for all journalists, but there's something that comes through, whether it's, you don't have any links in the email, or you've got to like download something to listen to it. Everyone's different, but is there anything in particular?
That's a good point. Make sure you put your links in. It does happen where they like listen to it and there's nothing there. So make sure everything that you want me to know is in the email. The other thing I would say is don't try and play tricks. Like don't put like such a thing if we've never spoke before, because that's
that old trick.
That. Oh yeah. And I'm like, oh, who's this? And they're like, I've never spoke to you before ever. That's annoying. So don't do that.
Where you put as if we've
as in,
had a conversation.
As if we've been talking
about this for a while, so I'm just following you up. You've already spoken to me about this. That's irritating.
But to be honest, as long as all your info's in there and you're nice and friendly, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't really get annoyed by press releases.
Yeah.
The most annoying thing is if the music's no good.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Which you can't help sometimes if that's what you do.
Well, yeah.
So, you are who you are. So
indeed.
So you're at the next stage in your career, or at least you think you are. When should an artist? Oh God, I sound really like such a sarcastic bitch. I'm not at all. Maybe I'm a bit, but you're thinking of hiring a PR. When is a good idea to do that? How long can you, do your own PR? Is there a benefit of doing your own PR?
Basically, I think the important answer to that is that it really, unless you get into a certain level, really isn't essential at most points to hire a PR. It's definitely a preference. And I think anyone that does PR for a living, or radio plugging or anything, that tells you that you need them, you just run a mile, for sure. And if they approach you as well, run a mile. Because we turn down most of the stuff not most of the stuff, that's not fair. We turn down quite a lot of stuff. And generally the only stuff the main reason we turn stuff down, unless it's like rubbish, is that we can't do something for them. And no, that's something that I always appreciated about the people that I work for, that was what they expected, and there was no pressure on me to kind of sign bands up that I realistically knew no one is going to be into this. There's no story here. It's, just, I don't know if this is a Yorkshire specific thing, but it's just 4 lads. Like, there's no story. Not the 4 lads being the specific thing to just Yorkshire. I mean the thing of like, they're just doing, it's just 4 lads, it's great. But I mean, that's my point. If someone, there's even a section on the BBC introducing website now that says, if you've been on the playlist, you're going to get approached by PR companies and radio pluggers. Ignore them. And like, that's how bad it is. So I think at a certain point, it is a preference, definitely. But I think if you're getting to a point where you're you're being written about a lot, and you want to manage it, and you want to make sure that everyone that writes about you has the right images, has the right, thing. Like, I work with My again, an amazing band. Probably, maybe a band at that level wouldn't need PR. Probably they can definitely do it themselves. But the fact is, they're useless at it. Like, I'm a musician. We all know musicians. Musicians generally are quite useless a lot of the time. So they get their stuff wrong. They get their words wrong. They get their things muddled up. They send emails without links in. So I make sure all that happens for them. So I think there's a certain amount of, like, when you should maybe traditionally, if I can finish tanking my own business, is if you're struggling to deal with it all, or if you feel like there's a point where you've actually done all you can, because there is a skill set involved. So if you feel like you're struggling, you're not getting anything, you want to take a chance on it, you want to handle the narrative a little bit better. You're worried that secretly one of you's a dick, and that might have to be dealt with at some point. You know what I mean? Like, those kind of things. Those are important. But I guess my main point, I hope it's not a cop-out, is really up for you to decide when you think that you could benefit from hiring a PR company, and then for you to decide what you actually want, for you to decide if they're right. But they're probably, unless you need someone to, like, I'm working at the minute. I'm working with a band from the '60s, like founding members of the Rolling Stones. We're doing like two days in London with The Guardian next week. They need a PR because they're like 75 and they don't care anymore about that stuff, which is fine, because why would you at 75? So they need a PR. But unless it's obvious like that, I think it's preference when you want it and if you want to explore it.
I guess pretty much what Harry said, but a lot of the stuff you can do yourselves and you can learn to do yourselves. The first thing is just be polite on email. If you just send them a short piece about yourself, the links to the music is so important. A stream, if you're approaching radio or a podcast or whatever, then put in a download link, and make sure that you just make it easy for the person to listen to your music. There's no magic spell to this. If your music is good and they like your music, they will write about you. I forgot to mention, I've started a company with Sharon. Where is she? Sharon's up the back. So Sharon works with a promoter called Regular and used to manage a band called We Were Promised Jetpacks. Sorry, Sharon. And Yvonne, a lady who used to work for Island Records. And we've started a new agency, Lost Art Agency. And the first band that we've got on our roster, one of the reasons that they came on board with us, the lead singer she sang with Morchiba and Bombay Bicycle Club, and the drummer was with Baby Shambles. Let's not talk about that. But anyway, so they have formed a kind of trio, and they're incredible. And the lead singer, unfortunately, she suffers with ME, and she just felt that she just couldn't handle doing the PR. So we struck a deal with them, and brought it down and agreed to do the PR. And the reason that we agreed to do it was because the music was so good and we saw the potential in them, and we just thought, no, we cannot let this one go. So there's different reasons, but you can learn to do this yourselves. Just go out and do the research. Honestly, just find the contacts, email them, and be polite. It's as simple as that.
From a journalist's perspective, PRs make my life so much easier.
I was going to say, do you prefer being
because
reached
there's
out to by
nothing,
PRs?
there's no substitute for a good PR who knows what they're doing. They can really sell you, and then you've got like that sort of freeway relationship that works really well. And yeah, as a journalist, they make my life so much easier and the job easier. And I mean, I'm not an artist, but personally, I would recommend getting a PR. But obviously, it depends on cost. And I just think at some point, you're best off doing it. Maybe not when you're first starting out, but then once you get into a certain level, I think you need some help. And I would recommend it. Because when the journalist-PR relationship works well, then it's a result for everyone. So... yeah, from my perspective, I'd get a PR.
I think with that is they're journalists. Well, from my point of view, I'm an artist as well, and I personally couldn't have achieved the stuff that my band has been able to achieve without our PR at all. We've worked with her from the beginning for about 3 or 4 years now, and because of that longevity, you know, we have a strong relationship with her. She knows what we're about, and also she has a strong relationship with journalists, not just through us, but through
It's Natalie, isn't it? Yeah.
Natalie, yeah. And
There you go.
see, yeah, we had never met before, but you know Natalie, who does at Yes Please, yeah, who does the band that I play in, Our Girls Press, and she has made our lives so much easier because we've all got full-time jobs. This year we've spent touring almost constantly, and we've released an album to do all of the artistic, creative stuff and be on tour, and then oh, you've got to be at this place for this interview, send these questions of, I need this type of photo for this type of article. That stuff is, she does make our lives a lot easier. But what I have noticed is that journalists do also like to have quite a personal, close relationship with bands as well, with artists. Do you find that? Do you like to have a relationship directly with the band?
I'm not too fussed.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get friendly with bands, then that's fine, but I don't really sort of seek it out. I don't think you need to be friends with journalists. I wouldn't recommend it anyway, to be honest. I mean, like I say, that three-way relationship can work fine, even if you don't really like each other, because you're all getting something from it. I will get the feature, you will get written about, the PR will get the feature as well, and that can work even if you hate each other. Obviously, it's nice to get on with people, but you don't have to chase friendship with journalists, and I wouldn't recommend it anyway.
Also, increasingly, that's what Twitter is for. There are quite a lot of bands, but are present on Twitter a lot of the time, and a lot of journalists are exist on Twitter, more so than in real life, and you're more likely to talk to them on Twitter than you are at a gig, which is fine because people have to live their lives and they don't want to talk to everyone all the time. But I know that definitely, I felt like I was too negative about PR because I didn't want to appear biased or that I was shilling. But they're definitely, as you were saying about the relationship with the journalists, I guess a crucial thing is that you can have a relationship with a journalist as a band, and that might pay dividends, but it also might put a lot of pressure on your friendship with that journalist if you're kind of putting. And the reason that I feel like you must agree when you work with this band, yeah. Have you got a horror story?
No, I understand. I've got a lot of friends that are journalists, and I work within that realm. I do quite respect amongst my journalist pals is though that they'll tell me if they do not like something, and I'm just would rather them say not for me, and I'm like, that's fine, that's good. But also, do you not find, John, that when you see a PR come up on your email, you kind of respect the releases that they come through with? Oh
yeah, definitely.
And you automatically will give them the time of day.
Yes, like we were saying about Natalie, we were just talking about before. If she emails me something, I will listen to it. And
they have a reputation, and
also I know her, so
Yeah.
and that's just how it works. So I suppose if you're doing it on your own, you've got to be mindful that it can be hard just standing over there trying to do it on your own when you could really have some help. And once you get with that PR knows all these journalists, and it would make it much easier for you.
And a good PR as well is a good PR as well as constantly when they maybe book something in with you for like a feature on the Independent, and it all gets signed off, and you pitch it, and it all gets agreed, and it's all good for one of their bigger acts. They'll then mention on the end of the email like, "Hey, thanks so much for this. Like, by the way, just check this out." That's one of like the kind of bigger things, is that like next week when I'm in London doing this thing with the Guardian for that big band of the Nice Old Men, I'm going to take them a My record. I'm going to go, here's this record, because this band are the best band in the world. No one knows who they are. So that's like another advantage to it. And as well, doing PR on your own for your own band is quite hard. And I think one of the things that's quite hard about doing press for bands is unless you work with bands you don't like, if you work with bands that you actually believe in, to go to an artist with very little or just a ton of rejections is horrible. It's a horrible thing to have to do, to kind of go, this thing that you've worked for years and years and years, put everything into, paid for, like no one gave a shit, and I'm sorry. So that's quite a hard thing to do, but I suppose being on the receiving end of it directly is no easier. Basically, being a musician is horrible and thankless. But we all knew that, didn't we?
We're just ray of sunshine, all of us. So when looking for a PR, we've already mentioned like their reputation, looking at their roster of the other artists that they work with. Are they, do you have something in common with them? Are they a specialist? Say that you are a DJ. Are they a specialist PR for DJs, or do they look after prog bands? I think when you're approaching or looking into, because again, as many journalists as there are so many PRs now, and it can be difficult if you are going into it blindly to know, is that a good PR? Is anyone gonna, me paying them 500-600 quid for a single campaign when I've got no money, would I just be better off just sending the emails than myself? So what should people look for in a PR?
Well, just on the same sort of note, if you're doing it yourself, then have a think about where you're actually sending the stuff. Because if you're like a folk artist, you're not going to get covered in Mixmag. So I mean, there's no harm in spreading your net wide, but just think about it and be realistic. Yeah. And also, this is going slightly off topic, but if you butter up the writer in an email, he's far more likely to take notice, because writers have got egos too, believe it or not. And if you shown that you've taken a bit of time to know what they've done, what they've written, then that goes a long way, actually. So that's another thing to bear in mind.
So do your research.
Yeah.
Have they covered similar artists? Do they write for blogs that cover that type of music? To hire Natalie. The roster, her roster is insane. And she's fucking cool. Like, she's so cool. If we met up with her and she completely got it. We had a conversation. She already knew our manager who had worked with her in the past, so we knew that she could deliver. It wasn't her just PRing herself for a load of crap. We're like, yeah, I can get you all this, that, and the other, and then there's no results at the end of it. So for me, it was the roster really, her reputation, and actually the stuff that she's delivered in the past for similar artists. I think a lot of common sense, really. Like if you're going to buy a washing machine, you're like, oh, what one looks good? Let's have a look. Let's ask my mate who also just bought a washing machine. He loves it. Like common sense. You shop around.
They love the washing machine.
Yeah. You, it was brilliant. Yeah, it got like 8.5 on Pitchfork.
Best new washing machine.
Yeah, won Best New Washing Machine at Music Week Awards. No, I think common sense in terms of doing your research. Same with I guess. Hopefully, you were going to tell me about hiring a PR. Doing your research on that PR, seeing what they've got for other artists. Do they work with similar artists? And also, I think it's good if you have a personal connection with them. Eventually, if everything all goes well, you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. You're going to have a lot of conversations with them. They have to understand you, and obviously it's beneficial if they love your music. They're more likely to go out there, work really hard, take journalists to gigs. Yeah, I think it helps if everyone likes each other.
But I think it's like anything else. You'll get a good feel for that when you meet someone.
Yeah.
And you might think, on paper, this might look good, but when you meet someone, you think, oh, we didn't really connect or whatever. So I think you'll know when something's, I think with things like that, you tend to get a good feeling about things anyway.
Yeah, I think so. So we sort of already touched on social media a little bit. What part does social media play in PR? And we've already talked about Twitter. Do you cover stuff that you aren't sent, that you just find through searching, through social media, through your own sort of research?
Right. Well, the media is obsessed with itself, isn't it? So, like, if you've got a good social media game, then you're likely to get covered more. That's just true. I mean, I don't think I've ever found something on Twitter that I haven't been sent or whatever. But once you start getting a bit of traction, if you've got a good social media game, I mean, you only have to look at the NME reporting on every tweet Liam Gallagher does or whatever. I mean, I know that's an extreme example and ridiculous, but it can help get you noticed. But that's I'd say that was secondary to any sort of PR plan that you might have in place.
So you're more likely to cover stuff that's been sent directly to you than necessarily finding something.
There's always the chance that you might read about something that's been tweeted that you might have missed. Yeah. But mostly it's just what you've been sent, I'd say.
I feel like there's a lot more bands with PRs than let on about it, which is also an important thing. Which is well, obviously I think is okay, but maybe a bit of a shame. It throws more, the issue with the bands with money, kind of doing more. But I just think that's quite an important thing to remember. I think the reality of you being able to just sit and go and look through, where would you go to look through music? Maybe you'd go and look at Pitchfork. Maybe you'd look at DIY or Line of Best Fit or Clash or something like that. But realistically, probably 9 out of 10 or more of those bands have someone doing that stuff, have someone looking at it, because there is so much music in the world. Really, you can be as idealistic as you like, but there's so much music. But there are, as you say, you're more likely to listen to something if it comes through a trusted voice. And there's a bit of there's definitely sometimes feels like there's a little gate there, but I don't think it would be much different if all the PRs went away. It'd still be an overwhelming amount of music. It probably would still see the same things written about across those same platforms. It would be the same band that got written about on those platforms all at the same time. I don't remember what my point was, sorry. Has it been an hour?
It's PR's never made a song any better. Do you know what I mean?
They just make it a bit easier to write about, maybe.
I think, that's important. I mean, ultimately, it's about the songs, It will help, but, no amount of good PR is going to convince me to like something that I don't like, you know. So
one thing I'm quite interested in from like an artist point of view is premieres. That word, the P word. Do people care about premieres still? Are they worthwhile? Obviously, there's different routes you can go down, but that used to be the thing, wasn't it? Like, oh, it was premiered on Clash. Oh, it was, you know, if you haven't got a premiere, it's like, oh, we didn't get a premiere. Like, oh, boo-hoo, it's really sad. So, but as you said, things are changing so quickly. The amount of music now is forever increasing. Do they still matter?
I don't think so. I mean, if anything, they're probably more important to the publication than the artist, because the publication could say, oh yeah, well, we had, you know, whoever it was first, but as soon as that happens, then all the others are going to start writing about it and tweeting about it, whatever. So it's just like, once it's out there, there's then a deluge of follow-up stories from all the different blogs and sites. So it's going to get heard no matter what. For me, it doesn't really have any cachet for the artist, more the publication.
Blogs are rapidly stopping doing premieres now, and a lot of PRs are finding that. We stopped doing premieres ages ago. A guy called Ali McRae, which a few people might know in this room, told me on the phone once, unless you're fucking Beyonce, then a premiere doesn't matter. And he said, I think because Spotify is obviously changed the landscape quite a bit. So if your music's being released on all these platforms, but say, for example, you release on SoundCloud ahead of Spotify, but you're desperate to get on these Spotify playlists, then you know, you kind of have to release all your music at the same time. And if you're spending 2 to 3 weeks desperately trying to get a premiere on somewhere, like Consequence of Sound or DIY or whatever site it is, and in all that time, you could have emailed how many blogs, you could have gone to Hype Machine, you could have gone through to your genre that you identify with, listed all the blogs that were on there, gone through all the contacts and emailed everyone within that time, and you could have gained 10 kind of blogs writing about you and people paying more attention for you getting press within all those areas and coming up on all those Google searches than just getting that one premiere. I've seen people premiered on certain sites and only getting 200 plays in the week. So it's, you know, it really is kind of something that I don't think it's a thing anymore, but that's me.
I still think it's worth a crack. But as you said, they're basically they're basically finished. Like Dork and Upset don't do them anymore. Line of Best Fit barely do them. Clash used to do quite a lot. They've scaled it right down, and they are like less and less. But I think the purpose of them has gotten twisted. And actually, they don't benefit the website, really. They benefit the band. Because there's, like 500 press releases going out a day at least. And if you work with a band, I'm going to use My again as my band for my preferences, right? But them releasing a track is not newsworthy enough to get for DIY or... So for the places that I would always target to get them written about. Them releasing a new song is not newsworthy enough for the Line of Best Fit. It's not newsworthy enough for DIY or Clash, basically. But they have had stuff on all of those by giving them an exclusive play. So it is still worth a crack. I don't think you should spend weeks and weeks and weeks on it, but realistically, it's emailing someone and going, would you be up for doing this? And if they don't write back, then you go right back to preparing your other stuff. But I do think it is worth a go, because you realistically will get, and as well the other thing that obviously you're right about indie sites doing stuff and getting like 100 players or 80 plays or something like that. But the other thing that one of the crucial, like one of the most crucial roles of PR and what you really should want from it is quotes. And no one ever really talks about quotes. But there's a site based in Glasgow who are changing now. They're not doing data stuff, but called Golf Lake Paint, right? Amazing site. like write beautiful stuff. Like I read that, even if I didn't do PR, I'd still read that site. They write brilliant stuff. I would always pitch for that stuff. Because if you can then go, maybe so they would often run stuff on My, right? As my constant example. They'd often run stuff on My. It's not big, them releasing a track isn't enough for them to stop the presses write a news piece on. But then when I go to more people and I say, hey, look, we write about this, I've got some like beautiful words from a trusted name. And like, you know, as soon as you publish a piece on The Independent, the band or the PR or the manager's clawing through it to find that little sentence and a half that you can then be stuck on an advert or stuck in the next press release, things like that. So one of the things that premieres still function, though they are basically finished now, is that they guarantee the artist, not the publication getting the first dibs, because as you say, that doesn't matter anymore, but they guarantee the artist a little bit of coverage on a site that probably, not for not wanting to, but just doesn't have the resources to run the amount of news that's required. So you guarantee yourself a write-up on a website that is then useful for booking shows, it's useful for booking festivals. You know, PR is pointless if you don't, that's not a tweet, Roxanne, on its own. PR is pointless if you don't back it up with everything else. And if you hire a PR company and then do nothing else, it's not the PR's fault. You've got to book a tour. There's no point doing an album campaign.
You've got to have a whole
you've got to do loads of stuff
on something, because it will eventually just be, you know, even an hour later that post will be way far down on their Twitter, even on their website. So I think that is a very good point.
Yeah, and you can then go to your agent and say, right, here you go. Here's a bit of paper, and I've got all these like nice press quotes here, and then that is like it's an arbiter of good taste. That's what the press is now more than anything. There you go.
Tweet that now.
Tweet.
Everyone.
That's a good quote. But that's what it means now, and that will help you book shows, and that will help you get the stuff that will bring in more money than everything else. It has to work in conjunction with the main thing that I would like to get across is it has to work in conjunction with everything else, because on its own it's not enough anymore.
It's a cog in a bigger wheel. Okay, so I think that's all we have time for. Hopefully it's been informative and you've enjoyed it all. I don't even think we have time for questions, so if you've got any questions, just give us a tap on the shoulder and we'll be around. But thanks very much. Thanks to Roxanne, and enjoy the rest of your day.